Okay, we are on our last of the 10 Commandments, and my wife asked me, what's the next series? I don't know. I don't know. I love these series. And how many people like when I preach series? Amen. I've got 3 different series going on, and it's kind of neat because then I just keep, it's on the same mindset, but that's okay. But anyways, Exodus chapter 20, 10 Commandments series part 10. And we're in the last of the 10 Commandments. And again, these 10 Commandments are the foundation, the first 10 Commandments, but there are 613 Old Testament commandments. And I'm so glad we're not under the law, because if we are under the law, we have to keep all 613. Yeah. If you're guilty of one, you're guilty of all of them. How many people are guilty of at least one of the 10 Commandments? Amen. According to that, we're guilty. If we're guilty of one, we've done them all. So, Exodus chapter 20, verse 17, it says, "Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his men servants, nor his maid servants, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's." Our last of our series, and again, man, I love when series start. I hate when they end because it's kind of so final. But thou shalt not covet, I think is one that is everybody has committed. Our world is plagued with many curses, and covetousness is probably one of the worst curses that our world is plagued with. In the 10 Commandments, God strictly forbids this manner of sin. He calls it a sin to covet anything that is your neighbor's. This is the longest of the 10 Commandments and longest verse. And covet is simply, the dictionary says, grasping for more or being greedy of gain. It's wanting something that is not yours. If let's say Freddie has a nice, when he got his van, I want a van like that. That is coveting. I remember when we went out and we looked for Sarah for her vehicle, and I saw the exact same van as yours, except it was a dark, it was like a charcoal gray. It was dark gray, and I'm thinking, man, this is not. I sat in the van and I got the key and I sat in the van and I'm sitting there. This is kind of nice. I would like, and I stopped. I'm thinking, man, I heard what I said. I would like. In other words, I wanted it. Was it God's choosing? Probably not. But when I said I would like, it became me. And we have to be very careful on when we covet it. Dr. Lee Robertson, one of my heroes of the faith, said that covetousness is an ancient sin dogging or closely tracking the steps of modern man. When we go to churches, other churches, and it's like you see a whole pile of people there, you're thinking, man, I'd like to have all those people there. Again, with more people comes more problems and more responsibilities, but you know what? It also becomes a bigger family. We have to be happy with the vocation wherewith we are called and happy with what God has given us, but we ought not to be satisfied. We ought to be not to be complacent. We have to be satisfied and happy, but not to be complacent. I'm happy with the people that God given us, but I'd like more. Amen? Wouldn't you like to have more? I would. I'd like to, those sign-up sheets out there, I'd like to have to fill out 3 sign-up sheets of people coming in. You imagine Sarah sitting at the front door, okay, writing everybody's name that comes in. Oh, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Oh, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. Oh, Mr. and Mrs. Robinson and 12 kids. And all these people, and have Sarah having writer's cramp, flipping over another page. Writer's cramp. And everybody out at the same time. I'd like that. I really would. But when we're driven by wanting that and not doing something about it, it can become covetous. A story of a peasant who murmured to a giant landholder of the unfairness of it all. Knowing the nature of men, the landholder promised to give the peasant all of the land he could walk around in a whole day. The peasant, greedily trying to take all the area possible, overexerted himself and dropped dead with a heart attack. And he ended up with nothing. Do you want everything? I don't want everything. I don't. There are some things that I really don't want. I don't want a toothache. I don't want a broken hip. There are some things I don't want, but there are some things that I would like if it's God's will. I really would. My dear friends, it is possible for every one of us to be covetous at any point in time. And the older we get, if we let the covetous go, the more it will root in our hearts, and it will destroy us if we let it. I'm going to give you 3 questions about covetousness. We're going to end this series of the 10 Commandments with, I believe, one of the 10 Commandments, the 10th commandment that is broken by many people. Remember, the first 5 deal with our relationship towards God, and the second 5 of the 10 Commandments deal with our relationship towards each other. And I think the covetousness, the thou shalt not covet, that is the one that's broken by every one of us at probably numerous times. I want. Grow up. Seriously. I'd like to, Freddie was talking about taking a vacation to Hawaii. I'd love that. I'd love this. If you go, please go surf for me. Okay, get a video of surfing in my absentia. Don't know how to swim. Bring one of those lays back for me, okay? But just don't bring a hula skirt, and don't wear it in church, because that's a JPEG, brother, I do not want to have. When he goes to Hawaii, I'm not going to go, oh, man, wish I could be there. Oh, I hope it pours rain the whole week he's there. No, he earned it. He's going to go. If he goes to Israel, the Holy Land, I hope it's hot. Well, it's going to be hot. I could have went last week and this week, and I think they come back on Tuesday. I could have went if I had $2,600. That's okay. I don't have $2,600. God didn't want me to go, but I'd love to go to the Holy Land. I'd love to have a brand new car. I'd love to have certain other things, but God does not want me to have it. And a lot of times when we are driven by our covetousness, all the time when we're driven by our covetousness, we're always driven to the wrong way. So number 1, the first question I want you to write down is, what exactly is covetousness? What is covetousness? In Romans chapter 1, verses 28 to 32, it is described as this. It says, even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind. And by the way, if you're covetous, God will give you over to a reprobate mind. And God gave them over to reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient, being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceitful, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affections, incomplacent, unmerciful, who, knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. See, covetousness, plain and simple, is sin. Simply, it's sin. It is among the worst sins ever mentioned in the Bible. Those are the worst sins that God says. He says, hey, stay away from them. You ought to stay away from them. You say, well, I'm not disobedient to my parents, but are you covetous? I'm not full of envy. I've never murdered somebody. I'm not a hater of God, but are you covetousness? I'm not without natural affection, or I'm merciful, but are you covetousness? See, Achan was a man in the Old Testament who, because of a covetous heart, brought the judgment of God on Joshua's army. We have this song, it's this saying, Achan was bacon. And the Lord told Joshua to destroy Jericho and warned him not to take any of the gold or any precious thing for himself, for they were all the Lord's. Achan eyed a wedge of gold, 200 shekels of silver, and a Babylonian garment, and he began to covet them, and he took them. He stole what is in Joshua 7:15 called the accursed thing. It says here in Joshua 7:15, it says, and it shall be that he that is taken with the accursed thing shall be burned with fire. He and all that he hath, because he hath transgressed the covenant of the Lord, and because he hath wrought folly in Israel. God burned him up. And not only burned him up, he burned up everything that he had. His wife, his kids, all his belongings, all gone. Burned it all up. You say, can that happen today? I've seen it happen. I've seen people that their houses caught on fire, burned everything up. They had no insurance, lost everything. You say, well, is that always the case? No, I'm not saying that's always the case, but that's the first thing we better check on our heart. Amen? You better check on. You say, well, can God? Will God do that to me? I don't know. How's your heart? Do you want things that other people's have? Do you want other people's possessions? Achan could not help what he saw. He couldn't. He saw it, but he could help what he coveted and stole. The outcome of his covetousness act is one of the saddest in the Bible. In Joshua 7:25 it says, and Joshua said, why hast thou troubled us, O Lord? Thou hast troubled us. The Lord said, trouble thee this day. And all Israel stoned him with stones and burned them with fire, after they had stoned him with stones. I read an article of how they stoned them, and what they did is they buried them into the sand chest high, so only their heads were exposed, and they whipped stones at their head. I don't think that was felt too good. They were stoned to death. All because Achan took something that he should not have took. The cost of a covetous heart is more than you can imagine, and often is more than, well, always more than you're able to bear, because you ought not to do it. Covetousness causes unhappiness and misery. Satisfaction never comes until this greedy sin is crushed. Achan is not only one of God's people who has never coveted. Is not the only one, sorry. And Achan is not the only one of God's people who has ever coveted. Many of God's people today covet every day. Each week, thousands of Christians receive God's blessing and wages, and then when he asks for 10% back, they ignore the command and turn a deaf ear. Oh, I'm going to stop here for a second. Wait 1 second. Let me take this off. You know, when I take my jacket off, I'm getting serious. You wonder why churches today are struggling. You wonder why Lighthouse Baptist Church today is struggling. You better look at what your paycheck is, and you better look what you put in that offering plate. I remember Reg Wheaton. Reg Wheaton, he got saved. He was a friend of mine. We served the Lord together. When he got saved, he didn't have a church to go to. And you know what he did? Freddie was awesome. For 2 years, he didn't have a church to go to. But he read in the Bible that he ought to tithe to God. For 2 years, he took 10%. And by the way, it's before the government gets it. It's before the government gets it. Oh, my dear soul. It's before the government gets it. Amen. For 2 years, he put it in a savings account. And when he found the church, he closed that savings account and put that offering in the plate. And God blessed him during that 2 years. You say, oh, God's been blessing me. God's been blessing me. God, I got this, I got that, and I haven't been tithing. Wait a minute. Is that God blessing you, or is that your looking? Do you realize God can bless you greater than you can be blessed on your own? Hello? And God can bless you greater than you could be blessed on your own. And you better give back what's due to God. If you're not, you're coveting. You say, I can't afford to tithe. You can't afford not to tithe, because if you don't tithe, you have a covet heart. Do I need to close right now and have an altar call? For many of you, I do your taxes, personal taxes. I don't look at what your tithes and offering slip is and what you make that year. I don't put the two and do together. I never do, and that's on purpose. I do it at a separate time. But if we at the end of the year, do you need to square up with God? Hey, Sarah, do you expect me to tithe? Jim, do you expect me to tithe? Freddie? John? We ought to. You know why you should expect me to tithe? Because God commands it. Does it look like I missed too many meals? God commands us to tithe, and we ought to. You say you're hammering on tithing tonight. I kind of am, because tithing is if you don't tithe, that's the tip. That's the start of your covetousness. God may just burn you. Covetousness may also cause many of God's people to pass up opportunities to do great things for God. Those who could support missionaries, buy buses, help building projects, are just piling up higher and higher in their savings account. Soon the opportunities to do God's work and to be blessing to God's people will pass and be gone forever. Churches close every day because people in the pews are covetous and don't want to support the ministry. I personally know a pastor tonight, in 8 minutes, is telling his church family that he is finished effective immediately. He's giving them his 60 days notice. He can't work physically. He's not physically, mentally, and spiritually able to work a 40-hour work week plus another 100-hour work week as a pastor. Can't do it. He said, I'm going to get a job outside my church, and I'm leaving my church. That church probably will close. After hearing that pastor preach that if you just love God, you'll go to heaven, that shows me that our city needs this church that preaches that you must be born again. I don't know about you, but if we can go and spend thousands and thousands of dollars on stupid things, we could give thousands and thousands of dollars to God for something that just will make a difference. Amen? What are you holding to a higher esteem than God, than what God should want? What are you putting higher than God? What are you eyeing that's making you say, you know what? I would rather have that than see somebody get saved. I'd rather have that than this, to give this or to do something for the Lord. I'd rather have Jesus than silver or gold. Yeah. Anna has a song. What number is that again? 157? Only trust him, only trust him, only trust him now. He will save you. He will save you. He will save you now. I like that. Here, my prayer is tonight is that we just start to say, I'm going to be sold out for God. There are a lot of people in this city dying and going to hell, and we don't want to do something. We're covetousness of our time. I was visiting a church recently. Well, not recently, several years ago. I visited a church, and this lady was not physically able to get up and go out and go door knocking. But you know what she had? She had a phone. She had a phone book. And she dialed. She said, hi, my name is so-and-so. I forget her name. You don't know me, but I want to tell you about Jesus Christ. All over the United States, pastors were sending her phone books of their city. And she called them. When she died, they played a video of all the names of the people that were led to the Lord firsthand. And not just firsthand, but if these people went to the church and got grounded and they became soul winners. And there was over 15,000 names because the lady decided to pick up a telephone. Over 15,000 names. Isn't that great, John? 15,000 people decided to come to know Jesus Christ because one lady said, you know what, I'm not physically able and I'm not going to covet my time and I want to spend my life to serve God. 15,000 people. That they personally know of. Probably many more, but 15,000 people that she wrote their name down, she wrote their address down, and she made sure that the pastor of all those cities all over the United States got their contact information, and they went and they visited them, and they brought them to church, and they just say everybody came to church. No, not everybody came to church, but they know that if they died, they would go to heaven, because one lady said, you know what, I'm not going to be covetous of my time. And by the way, she paid for her own long-distance plan. Not one, she never asked money from any church. And if money was sent to her from her church, she gave it to her from other churches. She gave it to her church for the furtherance of the gospel. Or she sent the check back to the church saying, I'm not in it for this, I'm in it to populate heaven. Serving God will cost you something. It will. But my dear friends, I'm here to tell you, the reward for, I'm not even remotely done. I said 3 things. I'm done for tonight. I'll finish it off next week. But the reward far outweighs what it will cost you. When you die, you can't take anything with you. I'm working on my will, and man, I'm thinking of all the things I got, my Bibles I'm giving to people and stuff like that. You can't take anything with you. I just want to be known as the guy that just decided to serve God. Some to Jesus I surrender. Do you, or is it all?